Islam, Islam, Islam. I start with the Moorish American prayer. Allah, Father of the universe, Father of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. Allah is my protector, my guide, and my salvation by night and by day through his holy prophet, Drew Ali. I rise giving perfect praise to Almighty God Allah, his prophet, Noble Drew Ali, the harbinger, the forebearer, Marcus Moses Garvey, all sheiks, grand sheiks, governors, grand governors, supreme grand sheiks, and all officials of the Moorish Divine and National Movement. I give special high praise and respect to the Science of the World, Free and Sundry Moorish Science Temple of America, Assistant National Grand Sheikh Akeem Bey. I am National Grand Sheikh Jelani Bey. Islam. Good morning. Uh, this is the start of our series, on Moorish customary law, law pertaining to Moorish Americans. Um, as a add-on to the intro, the first thing we must do is get rid of the fallacy. Uh, excuse my puppy eyes. I just woke up. Anyway, the fallacy that Moors feel they do not have to obey or respect U.S. law. This is propaganda from the media because, see, they don't want you to understand or know that you are a Moorish American. You are more. Um, that's your legal identity. Per the books. That they conveniently hide from you and do not let you know exist. So I apologize. Let's talk about some things. All right. The fallacy that Moors feel they don't have to uh, obey U.S. law or they reject U.S. law. Um, the law that they're talking about or the legislation that they're talking about, it acknowledges certain things. Let's go to their U.S. Constitution. I said their U.S. Constitution because Prophet Noble Drew Ali in 1927 issued us our own divine constitution and bylaws. So we have our own constitution. This is what brings us back to the constitutional fold of government. Because if you look up Dred Scott versus Sanford, all right, in 1857, Judge Taney's opinion was that any African, free or slave, was not nor ever intended to be a citizen as described in the U.S. Constitution. So, contrary to a lot of beliefs of even Moorish Americans, they feel that that document pertains to them. Well, the First Amendment of said document, it and remember, constitutions protect pre-existing God-given rights. Constitutions don't give you rights. They just protect the fact that without that document, you already have the right. You just have to claim it. So the First Amendment to said Constitution states that Congress, let's start right there. Congress is the Senate and the House of Representatives who meet to make and enforce law under the executive branch of government. So the combination of those two entities make up Congress. So I go back to the amendment. It says Congress shall pass no law with respect to religion or the practice and establishment thereof. What does that mean to you? What that is saying is that the United States jurisdiction acknowledges the fact that when you exist for religious purposes, or you are a citizen of a religious society or government, the laws of that society are the laws that you obey, and that the United States corporation does not have the authority to pass judgment or to try and make legislation to stop your religion or your right, your pre existing right to practice and establish that religion. All right. Now that's on a constitutional level. And I already said that, hey, look, we got our own constitution, but we will hold you to your constitution because that constitution is your instructions, is government's instructions on how to deal with certain things. All right. So now, taking it a step further, taking it a step further, we go into some legislation right off the top of my head, um, that that e- 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 that we and please forgive me, I'm trying to think of several things at the same time. Um, we go into the legislation of the various states that acknowledges some of the things that religious corporations can do. And let me reiterate before I try to go into that. Um, Remember, a religious corporation is a type. It's a corporation that's religious in nature, and by definition, it's a type of not-for-profit corporation, meaning that it is non-tax obligated, and it is acknowledged by other governments on a subnational level. Well, as we mentioned before, subnational or subnational entity is a political division that exists inside of another political division, meaning that although they may share the same geographical area, there's two distinct jurisdictions. And everything one jurisdiction has, the other one must have. Facts. Well, it's in their legislation. All right. So now we get into some of the states' uh, laws, and I'll quote them. I'm gonna try something. I'm not too, savvy with this thing here, but we're gonna try anyway because it's very important for the people at large to know and understand that for the most part, we Moors are not criminals. We have discovered our true identity, you know, and the discovery of that identity makes a whole lot of sense. When I was in the military, I was in the U.S. Navy, and we would go to foreign lands. Um, the vendors would speak in their native tongue, and they would mention some type of M word, more word when they talk to us. Of course, everybody knows moreno. That's Spanish. It means more or moro. That's what they said in the Philippines, moro. Um, Morian. We kept hearing this when we was trying to buy sweaters in Sigonella. You know, More. We heard that in Toulon, France. They would say more, more. See, so the world knows us as Moors. I was looking at a video, and a person I know, um, he went to school in Germany, and one of the Germans called him black. And he said, "I'm not black. I'm a Moor." Well, the response was, "Well, we know that. They teach us in our schools that you dark skinned people in America are the Moors." So then When you go to a pharmacy in Germany, you see Moren Apatica. That's the sign outside of the store. And usually it has a dark skinned man with a full beard and a turban on, or more. See, so this garbage about, oh well, Moors don't exist anymore, or there's no, you're not a Moor, I mean, I've heard so many gobs of garbage, you know, um, because you have to understand, black actually means pale. So if you're looking at this live and you don't see me with no pigmentation or me as pale, I want you to check your vision, all right? Because I'm clearly not pale, so I cannot be black. And besides, Act 6 of our divine constitution and bylaw makes it against the law to identify as black. See, that's the theme of this series, that we have our laws. We're not we don't disobey law or US law. We have our own law that we must obey. Once we pledge allegiance to this religious corporation and this theocratic governmental society, that's a contract. We contract to obey the laws of our God, our prophet, and the legislative body that helps the prophet interpret the law for Moorish Americans. So, Moors, please put down that Black's Laws Dictionary, put down that Bouvier, and you Moorish chiefs, let's sit down at the table and standardize Moorish law. We already have the blueprint. Moorish American law comes from, and I'll get back to the legislation in a minute, but Moorish American law, and I say Moorish American specifically because those are the ones that follow the teachings of Prophet Noble Drew Ali, internationally known as Abhad Sheikh Sharif Abdul Ali, as I mentioned earlier in the previous live. But we adhere to the laws of our book of law, the Quran, or Holy Quran. That's what Koran. All right. And the divine constitution and bylaw comes next. We have additional laws. Then we have our doctrine and, the written law of our society and the instructions for how we are to conduct ourselves in government. See, so, just like, the old saying says, you cannot obey two masters. You will love one and hate the other. So it's not that we don't obey law. We have our own brand of law. And the United States has legislation that acknowledges that fact. For instance, South Carolina Codes 33 31 180 states, if the doctrine of a religious corporation is in conflict with this chapter, the religious corporation takes precedence pursuant to the U.S. Constitution or the state constitution or both. Well, the state constitution pretty much says that the the General Assembly of the state of South Carolina shall pass no law with respect to religion or the practice and establishment thereof. Smith Heard Revised Statute pretty much says what the Religious Corporation Act of 1872 says, which says any church, congregation, or society shall come together in worship in private or public. As a matter of fact, the law that governs said church, congregation, or society is decided upon by the governing body of said church, congregation, or society. So that means self government via religion. Aha. And when you read and look up religious corporations, it also has legislation. And I'm going to try something right quick. Hopefully it'll still be filming when I read this. This is a Smith Herds revised statute, um 112 backslash 42, chapter 32, um paragraph 171. It says any corporation may be formed for religious purposes under this act, and any law of this state for the incorporation of religious societies may receive land by gift, legacy, or purchase, and may erect or build thereon such houses, buildings, or other improvements as it may deem necessary for the convenience and comfort of such congregation, church, or society, and may lay out and maintain thereon a burial ground, but only 10 acres of such land shall be exempt from assessments of taxation, and all such land in excess of 10 acres shall be assessed at the same valuation as if were not a part of a cemetery, and no such property shall be used only except in the manner expressed in the gift, grant, or legacy, or if no use or trust is so expressed, only for the benefit of the corporation, church, or society for which it was intended. Now, paragraph 172 gets a little more in depth, all right, because it says that the trustees shall have the care, custody, and control of the real and personal property of the corporation, subject to the direction of the congregation, church, or society, and may, when directed by the congregation, church, or society, erect houses or building and improvements, and repair and alter the same, and may, when so directed, mortgage, encumber, sell, and convey any real or personal estate of such corporation, and enter into all lawful contracts in the name of and in behalf of such corporation. But no mortgage, encumbrance, sale, or conveyance shall be made of any such estate so as to defeat or destroy the effect of any gift, grant, or legacy which may be made to such corporation. But all such gifts, grants, and legacies shall be appropriated and used as directed or intended by the person or persons making the same. However, this limitation on the disposition of the real or personal property does not apply to the extent that a restriction imposed by a donor on the use of the institutional fund may be released by the governing board or an institution under the Uniform Prudence Management and Institutional Funds Act. Okay, now what are we talking here? What we're saying here is that, remember what the prophet said? Our prophet taught us that anything you buy, buy in my name or the Moore Science Temple of America. What was he saying? That property that you may own, put it under the protection of the trust of the religious corporation. You have that right. Let's go on, and then we'll go back to other legislation. It says any congregation, church, or society heretofore incorporated under the provisions of any law for the incorporation of religious societies may become incorporated under the provisions of this act relative to the religious societies in the same manners as if it had not previously been incorporated, in which case the new corporation shall be entitled and invested with all real and personal estate of the old corporation in like manner and to the same extension as the old corporation, subject to all debts, contracts, and liabilities. Word trustees, the word trustees, wherever used in this, shall be construed to include wardens and vestrymen or such other officers as perform the duties of the trustees. So I hope you you heard me or you saw me reading it and everything. I hope that comes out correct. Um, so we dealt with Smith Herzog statute, you know, and that breaks that down in a nutshell. So not only can you not trespass on the rights of a religious, in our case, society, um, there is a brick wall in the sand, that allows for us to uh, govern our own affairs, like the definition of religious corporation states. So now let me kind of go into the Religious Freedom Act. Now, I may go from state to state, but please understand that the Religious Freedom Act is uniform throughout all 50 states. Have to understand that. And they're very simple and they're very uniform. Let's see what we got here. No, this is not what I want to do. I apologize. Okay, I'm going to go to South Carolina because, see, um, some legislation can be kind of complicated. So one thing I realized about South Carolina is South Carolina kind of keeps it simple, stupid. So we're going to go ahead and delve into that. They've upgraded theirs 2022. All right. All right. Please bear with me. It seems like the governor has recently upgraded the Religious Corporation Act. So let's see what's going on with it. Okay. Masters held a ceremonial bill signing for the South Carolina Religious Freedom Act on Monday. The bill aims to protect places of worship from government overreach and forced closure during states of emergency. Under the new law, any place of worship denied their right to worship during declared emergency can seek declaratory relief and compensatory damages for monetary and non-monetary losses. All right, so this Religious Freedom Act is the real deal. It's very very uh, um, powerful, you know. But let's go back to the situation. The situation is the governments of these various states acknowledge the fact that when it comes to government, and it's cited in South Carolina's codes 1-32 10. So let's go down here to um, it says in section 1-32 40, the state may not substantially burden a person's exercise of religion, even if the burden results from a rule of applicability, unless the state demonstrates that application of the burden is a person is in furtherance of a compelling state interest, the least restrictive means of furthering that compelling state interest. Okay, let's go down. In other words, um, said religious society or corporation would have to do something that would be detrimental or dangerous to the government at large, or great governmental concern to that government, in order for them to um, at least sit down at the table and find a medium or halfway point. All right. So now it says in 1-32 50, if a person's exercise of religion has been burdened in violation of this chapter, that person may assert the violation as a claim or defense in a judicial proceeding. If the person prevails in such a proceeding, the court shall award attorney's fees and costs. 1-32 60 is the applicability and construction. This chapter applies to all state and local laws and ordinances, and the implementation of those laws and ordinances, whether statutory or otherwise, and whether adopted before or after the effective date of this act. Nothing in this chapter may be construed to authorize state to burden any religious belief. Nothing in this chapter may be construed to affect, interpret, or in any way address that portion of the First Amendment of the United States Constitution prohibiting laws respecting the establishment of religion. That portion of Article 1, Section 2 of the state constitution prohibiting laws respecting the establishment of religion, granting state funding, benefits, exemptions to the extent permissible under the constitutional provisions enumerated in Section C 1 and 2. does not constitute a violation of this chapter. So, take this back. So, as you can see, we've gone over several legislation that acknowledges one, that they do not have the authority to interfere with the laws, rules, and regulations of our religious society. And two, there's a penalty for violating our religious beliefs and practices. You know, even federal legislation. Let's look up this legislation. Okay, so now what I just looked up was um, Title 42 USC 2000 BB1. Now, let me reiterate the fact that I'm not quoting these laws as if these laws pertain to us. I'm quoting these laws because these laws pertain to them and how they are supposed to treat our society based on religious beliefs and practices. And the Moorish Divine and National Movement is a theocracy with religious corporations, period. So it starts by, in general, government shall not substantially burden a person's exercise of religion, even if the burden results from a rule of general applicability, except as provided in subsection B. So, in furtherance of a compelling governmental interest, in the least restrictive means of furthering that the governmental interest. So, the judicial relief, it says a person whose religious exercise has been burdened in violation of this section may assert that violation as a claim or defense in judicial proceedings and obtain appropriate relief against a government standing to assert a claim or defense under the section shall be governed by the general rules of standing under Article 3 of the Constitution. So now Article 3 Section 2 of the Constitution says uh, any ambassador or public minister shall have original jurisdiction in the Supreme Court. Okay, so once again, I've shown on the federal level, I've shown constitutionally, and I've shown local legislation stemming from the General Assembly of a couple of states where government is basically supposed to leave religious societies alone unless they pose some type of threat or anarchy to their government or society. So this is a real reason, this is a real important reason why you identify as a Moorish American. You wear your fez, you wear your Sheikh's medallion, you wear your flag, the red flag with the five-pointed star in the middle, standing for love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. This is your flag. This is your standard. And you must rep it at all times. You must also utilize your nationality and identification card. Now, in the oral statements, it is said that the prophet said that before you know it, that nationality and identification card is going to change right inside your pocket. It says, this is your nationality and identification card for whatever temple jurisdiction you're part of. We honor all true and divine prophets: Jesus, Muhammad, Confucius, Buddha, etc. May the blessings of the God of our Father, Allah, be upon you that hold this card. I hereby declare you are a Muslim under the laws of the Holy Quran of Mecca. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. I am a citizen of the USA. This is what our prophet gave us. This is the front of the identification. Now, that part about changing inside of your pocket, well, common sense, using all five of your senses, that's an upgrade. See, so you temples who are still using business card type identification, it's time for you to wake up to the 20, to 2022. Because everybody has some type of PVC type of identification. And just like state IDs and driver's license, we have the same information that they have on theirs. And the expiration date is an upgrade date because these things wear out. See? Now, this is what our jurisdiction has for identification. But it is lawful identification because it's the identification issued from our government, our society, our religious corporation. Does not every corporation have an identification? When you go to your job, don't you have an ID badge to acknowledge the fact that you have the authority? You're supposed to be in that building. Well, this nationality and identification card, what it says is that I am not a U.S. citizen. I am a citizen of the Moorish Divine and National Movement, a theocratic governmental society with religious corporations. So now, our next segment, we're going to get into our right to, and we touched on it in the legislation that we read, but to own different properties and stuff like that. We're also going to look at religious law in general. I'm going to read to you what the laws of religion, are and acknowledged worldwide. We don't need to be, go to international. We don't need the rights of indigenous people. Our prophet already said we're home. The very word Moorish American says Aboriginal and Indigenous because the Moorish have been coming here since the days of Mansa Musa and his brother Abubakari from the Songhai and Malian dynasties. So when those sailors came here, and a lot of them stayed when they came, they mixed in with the indigenous people, with the original people. So that's what makes us Moorish, because we are a byproduct of both people. The Moors from the Songhai dynasty in Mali, in Ghana, and all of those nations that make up those dynasties, and the original people like the She people, the Olmecs, the Mishen, the Mushen, the Oichita, on and on and on. So when those nuts about the um, looking at your DNA, and they tell you that you're 43% from Benin, and that you were a slave, like your DNA says, oh, and he has some slave DNA in here. You know, stop playing. Benin is one of those nations that were part of the Songhai dynasty. So if a sailor from Benin came over with Abu Bakari and impregnated a woman here and had a family with a woman here, that Benin DNA would be in you. So don't let them play you. What they're trying to do is make you feel like you're an immigrant too. There's only one immigrant that exists on this continent. And no, we are not East Africans. We may be related, excuse me, but no, we're not East Africans. So, like I said, this is the end of the introduction. So, what you should get out of this is the media is lying, especially when it comes to followers of Prophet Noble Drew Ali. Are there people who look like me who see that this is an advantage, or this may be a get out of jail free card? Yes. Hopefully, this series will help you identify who they are, because we're going to get into other Moorish jurisdictions and the laws and how they were created as well. This is so that you get a better understanding of the different tribes of Moors. All right. We don't all belong to the same organization. We're not all governed by the same constitution. Just like any nation of people, any empire of people, there are many nations and sub-nations within those empires. And the fact of the matter is, we are home. We are the first people of this part of the planet. The fact is that now we know we were never supposed to find out who or what we are, where we came from. Hopefully, this series will help you understand what Moorish Americans are talking about, or what Moorish Americans identify as. So you can treat us like that lady who goes into Walmart with the bonnet and the big dress on, or her husband who has some blue jeans and suspenders on, a full beard and no mustache and a straw hat. Or that gentleman with the long beard and the long locks at his temple with a wide brimmed black hat, white shirt, and black suit. You know who these people are, and you do not approach them like they are U.S. citizens. We Moorish Americans are not U.S. citizens. And those of you who say, well, you just said that you filed with the Secretary of State. I'll tell you, like Connecticut told us. I asked them, what's the difference between, in Connecticut, they don't have corporation. They call them stock. That's for profit. Non-stock is non-profit, and non-stock religious is religious corporations. So there's three categories. So I asked her about the first two, and she was telling me, well, yes, well, even with the non-profit, if they do a charity, they have to guesstimate what they plan on making for that charity, their goals and everything, and report it to the Secretary of State. Both entities have to do a report an annual report on what's going on with them. The for-profits have to pay fines, sometimes. I said, what about the non-stock religious? He says, oh, once you initially register, we don't even have to know if you change your address. The only thing you are doing when you register with us is putting us on notice you exist. Then our job is to alert every other corporation in that state republic that you exist. That's the end of our relationship. I hope you got something out of this one, and I hope you get something out of the next one. I love you, people, and I want understanding. That's what I want. You know, I look at no one, no people higher or lower. All my faith and reverence is in Allah, Father of the universe, and his prophet, Noble Drew Ali. That's it. We have one God, we have one law. Also, remember this: religion is law. So, you guys, someone will know I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. Everything is spiritual. The animation of your face is spiritual. When you get upset, it's spiritual. When you engage in combat, it's spiritual. You go into an alternate state. You go into a fight or flight mode until the smoke clears and you're standing. But the system of law that you obey is religious. In the United States, and let me clear this up, the United States is the 10 by 10 square mile island located between Virginia and Maryland, known as the District of Columbia, Washington, D.C. Now, Washington, D.C. has pilot, or for lack of a better term, franchise offices in all of the 50 state republics, known as the state of. So each republic has two jurisdictions: a constitutional jurisdiction and a state legislative jurisdiction, representing the corporate public policy of the United States corporation. So I hope again that this was very helpful and informative. And I hope the next segment is even more informative. We're going to get into religious law in general. Excuse me. We're going to get into religious law in general and the things that they are capable of doing. Who you were is who you are without doubt or contradiction. More or more-ish. I tell people all the time, you wear this fez because somebody in your DNA wore this fez. There'll be people who look like me that totally reject the identity of Moors or Moorish Americans. That's probably because they come from another tribe through the DNA that never identified as Moors. Remember, there's like 56 nations in East Mexico. Oh, yes, as I close, this is West Mexico, Maghrib al Aqsa, Morocco, farthest west. This is the empire. Northwest East Africa is the kingdom. Kingdoms are subsidiaries or subdivisions of an empire. Peace. Hope you enjoy Islam.